Hi, everybody. So as you probably saw, I had some issues with this instructions for the virtual lab last time. I lost my internet and the video just stopped. So I'm going to try again and hopefully get all the way through it this time. So behind me, you can see the virtual lab for the estimating the pH. And the way this works, or the way it's meant to work, is that you would start by reading the introduction here and then go into some background. So the background gives you some more information about acids and bases. A lot of this is the same as what we did in class. So this is really just review from what we were talking about together in class, again with the pH, looking at some different hydroxides and hydronium concentrations, or I guess just hydronium concentrations here, and how that corresponds to pH. Again, we've done that before. What is new that we didn't really talk about is using acid-base indicators. Indicators you can read about here. They are chemicals that change color in particular pH ranges. So here's some examples of some pH ranges where these things change. And you can read more or less about that as you like. You can also read about using pH paper, using a pH meter. And once you kind of have a sense of how that stuff works, you can proceed to the pre-lab. So the pre-lab here should work just like our normal pre-labs in class, where you go through and you complete the questions, just write them down on paper or type is fine too. And here you'll have to look up the color change regions for these indicators and then add what they would be. The pHs are given here, so you find the colors for those pH ranges and add them in there. All right, so now on to the experiment. Once you've completed the pre-lab, the experiment's in 3 parts. First is looking at a selection of different indicators and their color change regions. So, for example, with phenolphthalein, you can see that starting with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, that's what that indicator would look like, what that chemical would look like in solutions with those different pHs. And so as you can see here, there is a clear change between about 7 and 9, where phenolphthalein goes from colorless to pink. So you would write, you can make a little table that says indicator, color change, and color change range, or something like that. You can set that up however you want, just, something that makes sense. Some of the indicators have multiple ranges. Not that one. Hold on, let me find one. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. So you can see here that there are 2 different color change regions. There's one up here and one up here. So in that case, your table might have 2 different regions or pH ranges where you see color changes. Okay, so once you've done that for all of these, then you can move on to part 2. And in part 2, you'll be looking at the colors of the solutions based on the indicators that you just used. So having that table of where the color change regions are will help you to identify the pH of these different solutions. And so there's many solutions here, A through whatever K. You can just pick one from each category. It says the solutions you have been assigned. So I'm just saying pick one. So let's say we pick solution C. So we want to look at solution C in each of the 9 indicators. And so there's 3 listed in each picture going from left to right. So if I click here on C, I can see 1, 2, 3 different indicators. And those are phenolphthalein, bromothiamyl blue, and methyl orange. So I would look back at my table that I made in part 1 so that I can say, all right, well, phenolphthalein has this color, bromothiamyl blue, it must be in this range, methyl orange, it must be in this range. For most of the indicators, they like for bromothiamyl blue, for example, let's go back and take a look at that one. Knowing that bromothiamyl blue, that a solution turns blue when this is added to it, doesn't really tell you the pH. It just says that the pH is over, what is this, 5, 6, 7. So it says that the pH is more than 7. That's all the information you get from that. But coupling that with all the other indicators also should be able to narrow it down to a pretty good range. So that's the idea there. That once you look at all the indicators, you should be able to get a pretty good range of what that pH is. And then you can confirm that in part 3 of the experiment, where you're looking at the same solutions that you picked from part A, but this time with pH paper. And pH paper gives you a really direct, clear indication of the pH. And like in this case, I would say that's definitely 8-ish. Still not as good as a pH meter, but a good pH there. And don't worry if you don't get the exact same thing in both parts, but if whatever you determine in part 2 does not match part 3 at all, go back and look at those indicator solutions again. All right, so then moving on to the PostLab, and we were talking about this in class last night. I did actually fix this, so you can answer these questions. So for 3, solutions of baking soda and boric acid were prepared. When 2 drops of malachite green indicator were added to the boric acid solution, it turned blue. When 2 drops of bromothymol blue indicator were added to the baking soda solution, it also turned blue. Which solution has the higher pH? So you have to go back to the ranges of malachite green and bromothymol blue, see where they are both, where each one is blue, and then make the determination if that means that one of these is more acidic than the other. And someone asked, isn't this silly? Because we know the acid is going to be more acidic than the baking soda that we know is kind of basic. And I would say, well, just look at the data and see. Yes, it might be a little less obvious if we had more generic samples here, but take a look at the data and see what you find. Let me know if you have any other questions about that. So that's kind of the guide to the virtual lab this week. All that can just be done on paper or on typed in on the computer and then submitted through Blackboard. The pre-lab, the post-lab, it all gets submitted together. So hopefully that's not too much trouble for you. Sorry if it was confusing. And yeah, let me know if you have any additional questions.